All right, this is a quick video for the chapter 1 and 2 review day. It's day 8. Just wanted to go back and recap a little bit with you. This is on your Miro link in your homepage where you see your virtual classroom. You can get the Miro week 1 or the week 2 link. I'm in the week 2 right now. Chapter 1 is all about the parent functions and the transformations. So just wanted to recap what the different parent functions are that we've seen. We know what a linear function is. It makes a straight line. That's just y equals x. Remember, you could take a f of x out and put y in anytime you want to. So y equals x would be this line right here. A quadratic is the curve. That's just y equals x squared. Y equals x cubed. That's a cubic function. Y equals the absolute value of x is a v function. It's always positive. Reciprocal functions, got 2 spots for those. You got exponential functions, goes up really fast. Got log functions. You got square root functions, square root of x, y equals the square root of x, sine, cosine, and tangent functions. So those are your parent ones. That's what they're going to look, the parent's going to look like. So y equals x squared, or y equals x, or y equals the absolute value of x. What's going to happen, though, is they're going to put other numbers in there. And when they do that, they're shifting or reflecting or stretching. And all of those things are on here. Adding to the function just means you're going upwards. On the outside of the function means you're going up. Subtracting is down. Adding inside or subtracting inside is going to be your left and right functions. Multiplying by a negative in front of the function. So the whole function is multiplied by the negative. That's a reflection in the x-axis. And if you're just putting a negative next to the x, not any other numbers, then it's a reflection in the y-axis. And then you've got a number that you would multiply the function by. You're going to stretch it vertically if that's more than 1. You got a number that you're going to multiply by. It would be a shrink if it's less than 1, or compression, shrink or compression. And if you're multiplying by the number just to the x number, nothing else, then it's going to be a shrink if it's more than 1. It's kind of backwards. And it's going to be a stretch if it's between 0 and 1. So that's just a quick recap of your functions and your transformations. This gives you another little set up here, but this word right here is supposed to be horizontal. That word in green, so should block that out. Should be horizontal compression, not vertical, right there. All right, so let's look at chapter 2 a little bit now. Okay, so chapter 2, we started again with the quadratics. So chapter 2 is only quadratics. And so it's only the U-shaped curve. So it's the graph that looks like this. They have a U-shaped curve. That U shape is called a parabola. Parabolas are U-shapes. They're quadratic functions. Okay, so that's a little bit something that might come in handy to know. Then we just learned how to graph the parent on Desmos, and we just described the transformation. So we just told what the transformation was. Like, that's down 2, that's going to be right 2 because it's inside the x. So we were using this chart. So the first one was a down 2 because it was a minus to the function, so it was downward. The number 4 here was a negative inside the x. So negative inside the x was a shift to the right. So that's kind of how we used that chart. Then we went down to 2.2 and we were graphing and labeling. We were labeling what the axis of symmetry was. That's the line that cuts the parabola exactly in half. This is a parabola. We learned what the intercepts were, or roots. Roots or intercepts. This one doesn't have any roots. No solutions up here as far as the x value is concerned. And it has a vertex on it, which is also called a minimum. If it's an upward U-shaped graph, it's going to have a minimum. If it's upside down, then it's going to have a maximum. It's going to be the highest point at the top and then going downward. This one has a minimum because it is going upward. Let me see what happened to my thing here. Okay, So let's put that right there. All right, moving on. Moving on. Just wanted you to see those labels because those are going to come in handy. Now, what if you wanted to find the vertex, which is this bottom point or the top point if it's upside down, if you didn't have a graph? What if you wanted to do that? We used the graph. We just graphed it and we labeled the vertex and axis symmetry. What if we didn't have the graph? So here's the trick. You're going to make x equal whatever makes the function 0. And then y is going to be whatever you get when you solve it. Okay, so if I was going to look at this first one here and I didn't graph it, I just wanted to know what the vertex was. I look at that and I say, well, if I was to put a 2 in there, it's going to make that function equal 0 because 2 minus 2 is 0. So my x value is going to be a 2 because that's where the x is. Once I solve that, 2 minus 2 is 0. 0 squared is 0. So my y value is 0. So there's my vertex. On number 3, if I look at the parentheses, I want to make that parentheses 0, make the function 0. I would want to put a negative 2 in there for x. So now I know that x is negative 2. When I solve that, I get 0 plus 4. So you're going to end up having a 4 there. So it's negative 2, 4. So your vertex is what you get when you try to make the parentheses 0 and then solve it, you get your y value. I'll do one last one here. So if we got x minus 1, I'm going to make it a plus 1. That's going to make it equal 0. So 1 minus 1 is 0. 0 squared is 0. 0 times negative 3 is still 0 plus 3. So your vertex is going to be at 1, 3. 1, 3. So that's your vertex. I'll put a V next to each one of these so you know. And then we learned about the maximum and minimum values. So graphs that look like this are going to have a minimum because it's the bottom and it won't go any lower. Upside down graphs will have a maximum and they won't go any higher. So that's maximum, minimum. Let's see. Then we went to yesterday's where we were looking at the point vertex form. We were plugging in the x, the y. We were plugging in the h and the k because they gave us a point, which is xy. They gave us a vertex, which is hk. The only thing we didn't get was a. What was the vertical stretch or vertical shrink? And that's what we would try to solve for. So we plugged in all the numbers and we solved for a, and then we plugged it back in and got our new equation here. So that was how we were doing yesterday's. And we also looked at what we call the intercept form here, where you've got your a again, but you've got your x intercept or your x number because you got a coordinate. 11, 8 is your coordinate. So you're going to take your x number, subtract the first intercept, take that x number and subtract the second intercept. When you do that, you can then solve it and get your equation. So we were looking at that yesterday. That's more in depth on yesterday's video if you want to check that out again. That's a chapter 2 recap. I just wanted to recap chapters 1 and 2 before you take the little quizzes today. So good luck on the quizzes.